Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Device Diaries, where we navigate a day in the life of a medical device sales rep. Oh my gosh, you guys, today is episode 39, and you're in for a treat because I have a very special guest. Okay, today's episode is titled The Rep Life Playbook from a surgeon's point of view. So, hopefully, you guys should be taking notes right now because I'm about to give you guys a lot of nuggets of how to become a good rep. My guest today is the one and only Andrew Chung. He is a double fellowship trained orthopedic spine surgeon. He is board certified by the American Board of Orthopedic Surgeons. He completed his orthopedic surgery residency at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. This was followed by a combined neurosurgical and orthopedic spine fellowship at the University of Southern California. He then went on to pursue an advanced fellowship in outpatient and minimally invasive spine surgical techniques with Dr. Neil Anand at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and Docs Hospital. To date, he has completed over 100 endoscopic procedures with over 150 spinal levels treated. Dr. Chung has co-authored over 65 peer-reviewed articles in major spine and orthopedic journals and has written numerous book chapters on spinal surgical care. With over 100 research abstracts to date, his research has been presented both nationally and internationally. Finally, he continues to serve as a lecturer at local training programs. Welcome to the show, Dr. Chung.
Thank you so much for having me, and I apologize in advance for my voice. Allergies are getting me pretty bad here in Arizona, but yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for that introduction. It really is too much of an introduction. So happy to be here, and yeah, again, thanks for the invitation.
Of course. Oh my gosh, you guys. So again, reps out there, please be taking notes because I'm giving you guys the experts of the expert, right? So I guess like the whole purpose of this podcast is a lot of us reps think that we know what we're doing and think that we're good in rooms. I used to be a spine rep, so I thought I know everything. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to understand and learn your customer's language. And I talk about this. If you guys missed my previous episode, I talk about understanding your customer's love languages. Okay, it's really, really important because at the end of the day, we're there to serve. We're not just there to do paperwork, you guys. So I guess, Dr. Chung, the whole purpose of this is I really want to pick your brain based on your experience, what qualifies or qualities and behavior truly separate a great medical sales rep from a merely good one, especially when it comes to building trust with healthcare professionals?
No, it's a great question, and I don't know if it's such a black and white answer. To your point, everybody's got their love languages, if you will, and so I think to some degree, just like any other relationship, you kind of have to tailor what it is that you do, how you are with the specific in this case customer, which is the surgeon. But I think that there are some general principles that I think definitely differentiate a good rep from maybe a not so good one. But I if I may, I don't know if this is okay to do this, but can I turn it around on you for a second? I guess what are in general some of the common perceptions of from a rep standpoint of view that makes a good rep?
Oh, that's such an interesting question because I've been asked that so many times, and I think for me is honesty, right? Is a big thing for me because character is everything, and in this small world of medical sales or medical industry, everybody knows everybody. Okay, so for me, my whole life as a rep, um, um, especially coming from the Philippines, I think one of the things that I've learned from my parents, Dr. Chung, is like whatever you do in life, make sure it lines up with your values and your morals. Okay, I'm going to repeat that, you guys. Whatever you do in life, make sure it lines up with your values and your morals. So there is this whole like I don't know if you want to call it avatar of what makes a good rep, of like, oh, you have to be high energy, you have to be super aggressive. But I truly disagree, because I think that what makes a good rep for me, and that's my own personal opinion, is somebody that's a good communicator, and somebody that's a good listener, and somebody that's honest. So let's talk about that for a second, Dr. Chung. What do you think about that?
I think I think you're absolutely spot on. You know, as I said, there's going to be surgeons that maybe, I hope not, but there may
Yeah.
be surgeons that maybe don't resonate with with that as well. But I think in all, you know, surgeons are looking for partners, right? At the end of the day, you want somebody who, you know, stands by what they say, right? And to a large degree, is going to, hopefully be a long-term partner, right? And so it's just like any other relationship, right? You know, as you mentioned, honesty, right? So if you tell a surgeon, especially if you're, trying to kind of earn that person's business, here's what I'm going to bring to the table. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Just do it. I mean, I think it's as simple as that, whatever it is that you're saying you're going to do that. And if you're consistent about it, I think that, that's definitely a great starting point. Right. And so kind of, building upon that, what does that mean? Right. So, the reality is this, is that like as a surgeon, especially one in a device heavy field like spine, where I can't even keep track of how many devices are out there now that do the same thing, right? How many inner bodies, how many screws, how many biologics are out there, right? And everybody says theirs is the best stuff. And the reality is that there are some companies that have, superior products, probably more meaningfully is the instrumentation tends to be better. It's not the actual widget that is, that much better than, the next companies. In general, it's if a company truly stands out compared to another one, it's usually the instrumentation that really makes them stand out. But point being is that, for instance, when I got out of training and I was the new, kind of hot thing in the market, right? I mean, I would literally get approached by a different company, every other day, right? If not more frequently. And so you have all these people coming at you, saying, hey, I've got the best thing. I'm going to provide you with the best, support. So from a rep standpoint, it's like this, like if you don't bring the type of value that you say you're going to bring, it's very easy for me as a surgeon, particularly in my field, which is very device heavy, to just be like, you know what? I'm sorry, but this isn't working out. I'm going to go to the next person, right? Because guess what? There's 9-10 other people in line. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. That's just the fact of the game, right? And I think hopefully most of the reps that are going into this kind of have a sense of that, particularly in the spine world at least, or any sort of orthopedics, in general, device, very device heavy. So what's going to separate you from the other folks is, yeah, maybe you carry a good product, right? But it's not just the product, right? Because again, there's many companies that have good products. Really what it comes down to is, again, sticking to your word, right? And then, being committed, right? So going beyond just being honest, being committed to that individual, right? So if you say, hey, I'm going to bring you the best value in what it is that you do, that's not just getting the tray to the hospital, right? You need to understand what that means, right? So it's not just getting the tray to the hospital or providing the product for you on the day of surgery. It goes far beyond that, right? And I think it's just anything else. You want to, you want to know what your surgeon does, and probably even beyond that, that surgeon's entire kind of, little ecosystem, right? From surgery scheduler to PA to surgical tech to the hospital environment, the team members there. You want to be integral to all the workflows that the surgeon is part of on a day-to-day basis. In order to get, one surgery done, you need to understand and be a part of, to a large degree, that whole process of, seeing a patient. So, I mean, from my standpoint, I see a patient in the clinic, if they need surgery, we get them signed up, but that you need to understand that workflow, right? How does that happen? How can you make that easier if you can, right? And there are reps that actually understand that. They're like, hey, my company offers help with, authorizations for, certain products, right? I'm going to, work with your surgery scheduler to make sure that there are no hiccups on the day of surgery, because, if you just get one email, for instance, this is just, probably going too far off track, but just to kind of give you guys an example of this, if you get one email 2 months in advance that a surgery has been scheduled and we need you there is a good likelihood that that surgery maybe gets rescheduled, right? And if you're not in constant communication with that, uh, surgery scheduler, and that case gets moved and you're not paying attention because you're not part of the, the entire team, right? And the workflows. Now, when the case comes up and it's not on that day that was assigned 2 months ago, right? And if you haven't been paying attention, now on that day of the surgery, your stuff isn't there, right? So it's just a simple example, but it's, it goes more than just, hey, helping the surgeon out. It goes to kind of paying attention to the whole process and helping every team member of the surgical process out as well, and being integral to that entire kind of workflow or workflows in general. At the hospital level, another example, understanding, how the SPD works, right? Some SPDs, they need help, and they run way behind. And so if you don't have your instrumentation there 3 days in advance and you're not constantly checking on it, it can become a problem the day of surgery. Maybe it's not ready to go. And, unfortunately, you and I were just having this conversation offline prior to this, but you wish everything would just run the way that it's supposed to run in healthcare. But the reality is, unfortunately, that's not the reality. And so as a rep, even as a surgeon, there's a lot of micromanaging that sometimes has to be done in our imperfect system for things to get done appropriately, right? And efficiently. And if you have a rep that helps you with that process, that's a lot of stress off my back, my team's back, because now I can just say, you know what, I just got to show up and I know things are going to be taken care of and good to go. And whatever fires were going on, my rep helped me with that already. And I don't have to think about it, right? So when you're talking about the difference between, and I'll just give you one more example here. The other thing too is that, reps focus solely on, have a tendency, and this is, and I totally get it, and there's nothing wrong with this, focus solely on the happiness of the surgeon, right? Mm-hmm. The reality is the happiness of the surgeon, again, somewhat surgeon specific, but the happiness of the surgeon also depends on the happiness of the entire team, right? On the day of surgery, or for that matter, even leading up to the day of surgery, right? Surgery scheduler, MAs, whatever, but definitely on the day of surgery, it helps when the surgical tech isn't stressed out, when even a new nurse that's in the room, doesn't maybe know how to position, the patient, maybe surgeon's not in the room yet, doesn't realize he's got a new nurse. And hey, as a rep, you're like, hey, this is how he likes it done. And you kind of help the team and you're respectful of the team and you become integral again to the entire kind of process on the day of surgery as well. That is super helpful. So meaning don't just focus on the surgeon, focus on the team members that are part of, the, entire process of, providing surgical care. And I think, even beyond that, I think the core principle there is, kind of springboarding off of, honesty and integrity and stuff like that. The reality is that we all are there for one thing, right? None of us would have a job unless it was the person on the table that was hiring us for that job. And we have to remember that. And so whatever you can do to kind of help with that process of providing good care to that patient. And again, it goes way beyond just, bringing that product, on the day of surgery. That's what's going to really make you a valuable member of the team. And it doesn't matter, I mean, I've gone through this numerous times where, I have a rep and, maybe the company's not, the company's not doing anything special for me besides providing me with a product and, you know, uh, uh, and then obviously, the support, via the rep. Um, but I have other companies that are willing to kind of do more, right? Like get me involved with teaching, which I love, or, you know, device design or things like that, which I love. And the reality is you know, maybe the dark reality or however you want to see it is that sometimes companies will pay surgeons to kind of do some of these things. And so there's a lot of incentive for surgeons to switch, right? But I'll tell you in my experience, and I think in a lot of surgeons' experiences, when they have a good rep that provides a good product, right? Even if the company itself, the larger, company is not really doing anything special for me or these other surgeons, it's very difficult to let go of that company because of the person that's in the room with you, right? And that's what you want to become, is the person that your surgeon literally cannot function without, and is worried that if they move on from you, that all of a sudden their efficient OR days and things going fluidly is going to start suffering, right? Because surgeons, just like anybody else, just like you guys, we want to get the work done. We want to get it done well, and we want to get it done efficiently and just get home, right? At least for people that have families and stuff like that, or if you're single, you go out on that date or whatever it might be. But point is, you don't want to be there forever if you don't have to be, right? You want your day to go smoothly if it possibly can. And most importantly, you want to be able to provide the best care for that patient, which again, that all kind of relates to. And so if you become the person that, allows the surgeon to do that on a consistent basis, and again, I think it really stems from, honesty, integrity, to your point. Uh, those are the best reps. That's just, fundamental kind of number one. But it obviously, pervades to other concepts of what makes a good rep. But importantly to remember that at the end of the day, it's about the patient, right? And so I think if we, remember that, and do everything we can to, learn about the product, learn about your surgeon, learn about the team members, integrate yourself well into the team, in order for that episode of care to go so well for that individual patient that's on the table. If you think like that, I think that you're going to become a good rep. But it's not an overnight process, right? And so, obviously it's something that you got to work at, talk to mentors, other reps that are well respected, talk to your surgeons, get feedback from other team members, right? I think even as a surgeon, we get so, I don't know if it's like arrogance or what, or, just a sense of, we just get this like very myopic view that like I can only learn from someone who's 10 years or 15 years ahead of me in what it is that I do, right? So like as a surgeon, I'm like, I can only learn from a surgeon that's 15 years ahead of me or 10 years ahead of me. The reality is I can learn from a rep, I can learn from a surgical tech, I can learn from, even a medical assistant, right? And if you think like that, I think that you're going to be more successful.
Oh my gosh, I love that answer. Thank you for that.
Long on that, but that's kind of my general thoughts.
No, I love that. And I love how you mentioned something that actually that I've been telling other reps. It's not just about making the surgeon happy. I mean, of course, that's top priority, right? But you got to think about the team. You got a lot of people, you talk about SVD a lot. You talk about, the scrub, you talk about the assist, the nurses in the room. I mean, when, a lot of times during lunch break, they switch staff. So you have to be able to be aware of that too. And I feel like a lot of reps get so comfortable in their room to where they're in the back on their phones, instead of paying attention. And our jobs as reps is to almost be able to read the room and to read the case. And when I say read the case, I meant like you almost have to be two steps, ahead of everybody, right? You're anticipating everything and anything that can go wrong. You're paying attention, and sometimes, not every case, as you know, Dr. Chung, goes the way we wanted it to go. So there's going to be mood shifts, and it's your job to be able to navigate around that and make sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And again, to Dr. Chung's point, under a lot of stress. Okay, like surgeons are running around, they're getting 20 billion calls, they're dealing with patients, families, you name it, and you don't get to see that. That's behind the scenes stuff. So it's your job to make sure that before they even come in the room, like positioning, that's so huge. And I feel like a lot of reps tend to forget that part of like really getting to know your surgeon. You're a partner for a reason. Okay, you're not just there to do paperwork. You have to get to know your. I mean, I can attest to that. I can literally, like, my whole goal when I was a spine rep was I don't want my surgeon to be thinking about anything else. I just want them to scrub in. I'll set everything up. I tell the scrub, this is how he does his surgery from point A to point C, and this is how he likes things. This is how he likes his screwdriver. This is the handle that he likes. All those little things adds up, you guys. And going back to Dr. Chung's point of like SPD, oh my gosh, they play such an integral part in your job if you're an OR rep, because they're the ones that actually cleans your trays, processes your trays. And if you guys don't bring the kitchen sink, I don't know why you're in this industry, because things can go wrong. So you have to anticipate all that stuff, and that takes time. Like what Dr. Chung said, all of those takes practice and time. But at the end of the day, we're all there for one reason. Like we want to go home to our families. We want everything to go well, right? If you have family, if you're married, if you're dating, whatever, you kind of want to get it done, because guess what? The next day is going to be probably more and more cases. You're going to go back to work and you got to get to do it again. So the whole purpose of being a good rep, I guess, if we talk about good reps, is to offer as much value as you can. And when I say value, it's not just about making the surgeon happy of having, the best instruments, the best technology. It's about making sure that, everybody's happy, making sure that the room flows, making sure even if there's issues, make sure that you have solutions. Let's talk about that for a second, Dr. Chung, because I feel like a lot of reps, I mean, when I was new, I was guilty of this. There's a lot of things that I really didn't understand when I was when I was starting. And I remember when a surgeon would ask me something like, "Hey, Gaida, do you have this?" And I would say, "No, I don't have it." So as a surgeon, how do you feel about that when somebody says, "I don't know the answer to it"? Sorry, I don't know, but I'm going to get the answer for you later on. Would you rather someone tell you like, "Oh, I have everything you have," or "Doctor, I know everything," versus somebody that says, "Actually, I don't know"? So how do you feel about that?
No, it's it's a great question. That's actually what I was thinking about right now as you were kind of leading up to the question. The Again, goes back to honesty, right? Be honest. If you don't know, that's fine. I don't expect you to know everything, but just like was expected of me when I was in training, even early on as a medical student, if I was asked something and I didn't know it, you better bet I knew it the next time, right? Or you're not on that same token, you're not a medical student, you're not a resident. And so in that light, if you don't know, just ask. Be like, "Hey, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how could I have better prepared for this?" And most surgeons are willing to sit down and be like, "Hey, man, like," or "Hey, what, man?" Here's what you need. Here's what you need to know, right? And then just remember that, right? It's okay not to know. It's actually more annoying, and I think this is what you're getting at, and more aggravating when somebody acts like they know everything and they're just talking out their butt, and this goes back to really knowing your surgeon, right? I talked about how, it's a relationship, right? And so a lot of times, especially as I was kind of starting out, and this is not to, pat myself on the back by any means, but this is true, I think, across the board, you're going to have some surgeons that are coming out new that probably know more about the medical literature and science and modern day techniques, fusion principles, than some surgeons that are 20, 25 years out. Okay. So if you come to them and you start feeding them all this stuff, like, "Oh yeah, this is the best thing on the market," and then start trying to use these, words that, sound, fancy or, smart. That might work with, a surgeon that's been 25 years out, that's in, the community, that just hasn't been keeping up. But you start doing that to somebody who, has 200 papers published already by the time they get out of, training. Right. And it's not all about the papers. But the point is, if that person has been paying attention to the literature, you're not going to get off to a good start with that individual if you're constantly trying to play the person that knows more than that person does. Right. So really get a feel for, your surgeon, know your audience before you start opening your mouth. And I say that in the most respectful way, but I see that far too often. With me, I don't care. Right. It doesn't bother me, but I have seen it bother many surgeons where they're like, what is this guy talking about? He's just full of, or what is this woman talking about? He's just full of crap. Like, that's not true at all. That won't work on me, because guess what? I did research on that. I published 30 papers on that, and so it automatically discredits you, right? As a surgeon, or as a surgical rep. And so again, it really pays to kind of know your audience and then just be honest, right? If you don't know it that well, ask the surgeon, right? Like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? This is kind of what I understand about it. This is what I've been told, right? Surgeons love talking, right? I mean, most of the time they really do. I mean, most of us are egomaniacs to some degree, right? And so, if you get them to kind of buy into your education as well, I think that that's a better approach versus coming at them and just assuming that, or giving the impression off that you know more about something than they do. You might, but feel it out first before you start spewing stuff, right? And again, it goes back to knowing your audience. So anyway, to answer your question, I would absolutely much rather have somebody who's like, listen, Chung, I'm sorry, I don't know. Maybe it's this, but tell me what is it, so I can know for next time and better prepare. And I'll be like, dude, thanks for being honest. Yeah, here's what it is. And again, maybe not every surgeon's built that way. Maybe some surgeon's going to throw something at you, but I think the majority of modern surgeons are going to I think be more of like my perspective, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the better approach in my opinion.
I agree. Because again, it goes back to honesty, right? I mean, your reputation is huge when it comes to this industry. Everybody knows everybody, and it takes one mess up. And guess what? You're probably never welcome in that room ever again, especially if there's a patient in the room. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like patient safety first, right? And if you're doing something and saying something that's a complete lie, just to answer the question that you have no idea, you don't know anything about, you're basically putting the patient in danger, not just pissing off the surgeon, right? So that's the most important part here. And now you're causing more problems than providing more solutions. And as reps, we are supposed to be providing solutions and causing problems. But then, to Dr. Chung's point, you kind of have to figure out the answer to the question also, whether that's stepping out of the room, making a phone call to your manager or to somebody who's done it before, just finding a solution, and offering a solution, or like Dr. Chung, you mentioned something really, really interesting, because a lot of reps think they know it all. It doesn't matter if you're in this industry for 20, 30 years. We don't have a medical degree, you guys. So at the end of the day, we have to respect Dr. Chung, the doctors, the surgeons that actually went to school. And yes, you know your product really well. Yes, you do. Good on you for knowing your product. And that's part of the gig, right? But you kind of have, there's a difference between suggesting versus telling someone what to do, right? And again, like it's all relationship based, right? So if you've known each other for a while, that's different, right? If you have that buddy type of relationship, that's a little different. But then let's talk about this, Dr. Chung, because I feel like a lot of new reps get so excited when they walk in the OR for the first time, or like, cover their first case, and they're like, oh, let me tell you this, let me tell you how to do, like, what, as a surgeon, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, I think we all appreciate, hard work, and, enthusiasm and stuff like that. But I guess the simplest way to put it is, I think the best reps. This is my personal opinion, and I mean, you've been in the industry, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, you, you want to be you kind of want to be seen but not heard, kind of thing, on the day of surgery, right? And again, going back to kind of what we talked about earlier on, is I think that just like everybody else in the room, right, we're there collectively to get the case moving and do the right thing for that individual. So bottom line is, it's not about one person's voice being heard, or the loudest, right? It's just about what you can do as a rep, or for that matter as a surgeon, or for that matter as a surgical tech or PA, to just keep the case moving, however that may be, right? So use your enthusiasm to, rather than speak out, right? And that's not to say don't speak out, if it warrants it, but absolutely, like, you don't want to just be barking off stuff left and right, and just talking nonstop, and because that ends up actually in general being a distraction. You just you want to be seen but not heard. I mean, that's the way to put it. And just help others, with kind of whatever it is that they're doing, and again, just get the case moving. That's the simplest way to put it.
No, that's really great, because a lot of times, again, like, reps are just there, let me show you my stuff. It's like almost a competition. I'm like, nobody cares, no, nobody cares about it. It's kind of like when you're at school and that person that knows everything. That's like the most.
The know-it-all. Yeah.
Nobody wants to know it all, you guys. So you're not there to show how smart you are. Nobody cares. You're there to help out. All right. So, Dr. Chung, I kind of want to take a step back, and I kind of want to get to know you a little better. Okay. So you've been in the industry for a while. What made you decide to become a surgeon?
Yeah, no, I took a bit of a, sorry for my my pool vacuum
No
there,
worries.
making a loud suction sound. But so I kind of took a little bit of a roundabout path to medicine. Actually, my entire dad's side, they were physicians. So my brother and I, in my parents' mind, were destined to become docs. But I think we both kind of rebelled a little bit. I more than my brother. My brother ended up in tech. He works for Google. But right, did the smart thing. Although now with the tech industry being kind of shaky, he's a little worried. But nonetheless, I think we kind of both rebelled a little bit. Me more than him, and for a while I just really didn't know what I wanted to do, and so didn't really study very hard. And it's actually something that I very willingly. I used to be a little bit ashamed of it, but now I very willingly share, especially with students that are, kind of, because nobody knows what they want to do right off the bat, or there are people that don't know what they want to do right off the bat, and it's okay, right? Like, because from my experience, I messed around for a while. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't study very hard, accumulated some bad grades and stuff like that. But ultimately, fast forward, I ended up in a chiropractic program at the suggestion of my dad, who was a physician. He's like, hey, you got to do something with your life. Why not try, chiropractic? And I got there, and a combination of things. I started learning some medical science, and the school that I was at actually had an anatomy lab. And I really fell in love with like the surgical anatomy, like just getting in the lab and just, looking at, muscles, ligaments, nerves, and particularly the spine was very interesting to me. And then I met my wife around the same time, and she was very much like me, like kind of lost, didn't know what she wanted to do. And then we kind of both collectively said, hey, we gotta get our stuff together. It's time that we kind of, focus on something, and, and focus on our career success. And And so it all kind of came together, and I said, well, as much as I like, chiropractic stuff, with all respect to them, I want to be able to do more. And again, with that kind of developing love of the medical sciences and then, surgical anatomy, that's what really kind of pushed me to apply to medical school. But I was overcoming some, pretty major deficits in kind of my academic records. And so, but in spite of that, I was able to get into a program, and then from there, it was really just a matter of, again, I had developed this kind of love for, spine anatomy. I, at this point, kind of shadowed some spine surgeons because I was very interested in that. And I was like, at that point, I was just mainly just convincing myself that there's something that, like, that's not for me, right? I wanted to make sure, like, hey, there's not something else that I'm missing. And it just all came back to, like, hey, I need to be a spine surgeon. And why ortho neuro? Because people ask. I was a former personal trainer. I know you can't really tell anymore, but I used to be pretty fit, and so I just had a passion for the musculoskeletal system, and I thought at that time, at least, my personality fit more with orthopedic, so that's the route I went, and fortunately, I was able to get into an orthopedic residency, and the rest is history. I just same thing in residency. I tried to convince myself that there was something else besides spine. I just couldn't do it. And the reason being is, when it comes to spine, I love it so much. I mean, every day I get excited about it, whether in clinic to the OR. And part of that is in clinic. I was telling one of the students the other day, spine clinic to me is it's like you're solving puzzles, right? One of my mentors would say this, he loves solving puzzles. And it's so true in spine. If you really think about spine, very holistically, it's not like, no offense to the joint replacement surgeons or, the ortho traumatologists, but it's like, if you got a broken bone, you know what to do. You fix it, right?
Yeah.
If you got a bad knee, you know what to do. You replace it if that patient wants it. With spine, the common joke is you got a room full of 5, well-trained spine surgeons, and you give them the same case, you may get 6 different answers on what to do for that individual. And that's what I love about it, is that, it continues to be a diagnostic challenge. There's so many different ways to do things. And the surgical plan can be very, customizable to that person's, not only just their MRI or X-ray, but their entire kind of, lifestyle, socioeconomic kind of, situation. You have to kind of think like that in order to provide the best care for individuals. And I love that. On the surgical side, you're dealing with high stakes anatomy, it just keeps me excited. You can majorly impact people in a very positive way. You can take somebody who's not walking, who's not able to use their arms, who's in so severe pain that, they're just like crying out, right? And, boom, overnight, sometimes it takes a little bit of recovery, just make them so much better. And that to me is so impactful, and so privileged, to be able to be a part of that, for my folks, my patients. And then the last thing is that when it comes to spine, you probably weren't looking for an answer this long, but this is
awesome. I love this.
When it comes to spine, I tell people all the time, we have not mastered the spine at all. There's so many things that we don't know how to fix yet, right? How many of us as surgeons tell patients, you know what, you've got back pain, you've got a messed up back, I can fix it, but it's a 50-50 proposition. I hear that all the time. Why is that? It's because we don't have the understanding or the technology yet to make it more like, hey, 99% or even 90% or 80% consistently better in some instances. And what that means for me is that every day there is opportunity to be better. There is opportunity from an industry standpoint and from a surgeon standpoint as well. There's opportunity to innovate or figure out the answer to some of these unanswered questions. And so, that is so exciting, because when you look at kind of the trajectory of spine, even in the last 5-10 years, you've seen so many, technological advancements, and importantly as well, understandings of, when or even when not to operate, which are also extremely important, that have come about even in the last 5 years, 3 years, right? You're talking about like endoscopy, different, things on that front, even pain management type modalities, I look at what they do too, and I'm like, hey, that's kind of cool, right? And that's new and that's innovative. And so, bottom line is, I know that 5-10 years from now, I'm probably not going to be doing the things or surgery the same way that I am now, and that's exciting to me because that's going to keep me engaged, keep me interested. And I think from an industry standpoint, from a rep standpoint, I don't know. For me, I don't want to wake up and do the same thing every single day, right? Right. I can't, that's just not my personality. I can't wake up and, do the same thing the same way every single day for the rest of my life. To me, that I think I would lose my purpose, and I think I would get bored. And so from a rep standpoint, I think that, especially if you're going into a field like spine or even what you do, with technology constantly changing, and if you're paying attention, and you're good at what you do, that's a long-term career, where it's going to stay exciting for you. And so I think that is, I don't know, in my mind, such a exciting thing to think about, right? Like you want to be in a career that's going to keep you engaged, keep you excited, keep challenging you. Because at the end of the day, when you look at, I think you're going to talk about this, later, in terms of like what books, I'm interested in. When you look at just personal, I think satisfaction and personal growth and personal happiness, it's not just about money. It's not just about, having a good job. It's about feeling that you've been a part of something meaningful. And I think that as a spine surgeon, being able to provide the care that I do, or as a spine rep, being a part of that, or any device rep for that matter, and then being a part of something that's constantly changing and being able to contribute to that and waking up to that, I think that is a very personally fulfilling proposition over time. So anyway, I didn't always think like that, but looking back, I'm like, man, I'm glad I chose this field because like that's how I feel about spine at this point. So anyway.
I love that. I love that you say that. And I talk about this to Dr. Chung a lot because I mean, with like, for example, maps, right? We started with literally a map and now look at where we're at, like things are evolving, things are changing. And if you're not able to adapt to it, you guys are gonna left behind. And I say this with love because a lot of times people are like, oh, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Well, guess what? You're gonna get left behind. So
Yeah.
you have to be able to adapt and evolve to this ever-changing industry, which is so much fun. And I love the passion in your voice when you talk about, being a surgeon where you started and you like love like a puzzle, like, solving a puzzle. I love that because that's exactly as reps, that's exactly how we think too. And that's what drives me every day to wake up every morning, because I get to see cool technology. I get to speak with the smartest individuals on earth. And if you're not constantly learning, right, might as well be dead. And again, I say that with love. Thank God for this platform, right? You got to be constantly learning. You got to be constantly adjusting and evolving and adapting, you guys. All right, Dr. Chung, is there a core belief or principle that you stand by no matter what? And how has it shaped your career or decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes back to what you said. I'm not doing this on purpose. I mean, this is this is just how it's playing out. It goes back to what you said earlier. It's honesty and integrity, right? It's just doing the right thing, right? And I think that it may be cheesy to say, but if you do the right thing, and I even tell this, other younger surgeons. I'm not an old surgeon. Younger surgeons or residents, if you do the right thing for the person in front of you, because I guess the context is, we all want to come out and we want to hit the ground running, right? We want business right away. We want to be able to operate right away. You want clients right away, right? And the reality is that there is a shortcut to get there, right? But it's usually not a sustainable thing, and usually you're sacrificing some sort of, core what I think is, ethical, principle, to maybe get there, right? Particularly if you're in a very competitive market. And so, for me, I've always said, what, I don't care how long it takes, to build a practice or whatever it may be. I'm going to do it the right way with every brick that I lay down to get, to build this whatever reputation or skill set or whatever, being a very thoughtful, and a very, I don't want to say ethical, because that's sounds like, it makes it sound like, there's a lot of unethical stuff, but,
Right.
I want to build everything with, integrity and I didn't, for me, at the end of the day, it's like just doing the right thing for, the patient that we're serving. Right. And so, I think that with that, at least for me, it's been successful, because people can't look at me and say, I don't think they can, at least I hope not. They can't say, well, Chung just did that because somebody paid him to do that. Right. I think
Mhm.
most people, when they look at, how I practice, I hope they're like, you know what, Chung's doing that because it's the right thing to do, at least to the best that he knows. Right. I don't know everything, and I never, pretend to do that. And again, something that's so exciting about spine is that things are ever changing. Right. So what I think I might know now, and it might be the right answer now, maybe somebody else has figured out a better answer already. But at least for what I know, and from what I know, um, I don't think anybody can look at what I do and say, hey, Chung's doing the wrong thing. Right.
Mm.
And to me, that's so important, because at the end of the day, when I sit across from somebody who's a patient of mine, I want to be able to look them in the eye and be like, if I'm offering them surgery, I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, hey, to the best of my knowledge, or no surgery for that matter, to the best of my knowledge and to the best of my abilities, this is what I would do if you were my family member, or if I was sitting in your chair. And listen, I mean, if you're a young surgeon, young rep, trying to get there quickly, I get it. If you practice like that, it might take some time, but I can guarantee you, if you do that, the foundation is going to be so strong that it's just going to continue to build upon that. Right. So it may take longer to get where you want to go, but once you get there, your foundation is so strong, nobody can question that. And I think that is, at least for me, at least the way that I've kind of, chosen to practice and live. So kind of cheesy, I know, but that's I think, the best that I got.
No, that's actually really good. And that applies to us med device reps too, because again, your reputation is everything.
Yeah.
And integrity is everything. Like people talk and people know everybody. It takes one person to, it takes one mess up, and guess what? You're never welcome in that space, in that room, whatever that looks like for you. And at the end of the day, too, like how do you sleep at night? Can you even sleep at night? Like for me, that's really important, because anything that I do in life, anything that I do, any work that I choose, any career that I choose, I make sure that it lines up with everything that I believe in. Because at the end of the day, you guys, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter, like what to Dr. Chung's point, it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you can't even look at yourself in the mirror, I mean, we have a problem, right?
Right.
So, and again, like you're, if you have kids and stuff, that's what you're showing your kids, your lineage, honesty is everything. Values and morals is everything. That is who you are as a person. That makes you who you are as a person. When we talk about branding, that is your brand. And when we talk about brand, that has nothing to do with social media. It's who you are. It's who you represent. All right, we're getting there, Dr. Chung. So one last question for you. Is there a book that you often recommend others? And what impact has it had on you personally and professionally?
Yeah, I read a lot, actually. It's oftentimes I don't even remember the names of books anymore, because I just, sometimes, I'll read part of a book and be like, okay, I got what I needed out of this book. Let's move on. And so that's, I'm a little bit, ADHD in that regard. But, One of the recent books that I've read is a book by Adam Grant, who's I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a business, I think he's a business psychologist, and he's a professor at UPenn, the Wharton School of Business. Brilliant guy. In fact, I've read many of his books, but I read one recently. It's called I think Give and Take, I believe it's called. I probably butchering it. I'm not good with names of books. I go to the local bookstore, I look at a book that seems interesting, and I pick it out, and then I just, I'll start reading it. But basically, the idea there is that, in essence, and encourage you to read the book, is it's people think the general conception, especially here in America, is that you have to be a taker in order to be successful, right? You got to seize everything for yourself in order to kind of elevate yourself to the next level. And there's probably some truth to that. There's probably some truth to that. But his kind of core message is that it's actually better to be a giver. And you can still be very successful at, going back to, there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with being successful. You can do it, but you should do it in the right way, in my mind. If you're thinking about the big picture, which is not just, hey, I need to make a lot of money now. You want to be able to look back and be like, you know what, I made a lot of money. It took me a little bit of while to get there, maybe, but I did it the right way. And I think that in your lifetime, that's probably getting too deep. You're probably going to be more fulfilled with that, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's basically what he gets at, is that it's better to be a giver. And some of the most successful people in this world across all industries have been that way, right? They've just kind of given out, right? They just helped other people. And not only has it led them to more success, but it's also given them more fulfillment at the end of the day. When they look back, they're like, man, you know what? I got here and I did it the right way. And I think that's, something that we kind of lose sight of, right? Again, going back to, what I said, before, for me at least, and this is, the way that my parents taught me, so I'm so grateful for them. At the end of the day, you never want to look back and regret, any action that you took that you could have prevented, right? I mean, you're going to look back and have some regrets. But if you do things with integrity and honesty, and you just live by the principle, do the right thing, which, again, in this guy's kind of book, it's about, contributing, not just taking, but contributing to those around you. I think not only can you be successful, and I think you can be very successful with that, but you're going to look back 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and I think you're going to be much happier for that. And then, to your point earlier, and then the people around you see that, and that, that's meaningful too. Like, I've got my young daughters who, in my mind, are constantly looking to dad. There's another good book for dads. It's called Strong Father, Strong Daughter. And, girls look to their moms and dads, and maybe even more so their dads, for kind of directions on, how to be in life. And so, again, probably getting too deep, but, if you live with, good principles and with this kind of mindset that, hey, when I look back 30 years from now, I don't want to regret anything that I did, or, to shortcut or to be unethical or whatever. I think that, again, probably cheesy, but I think that, not only are you not going to be regretful of that, and you're going to be better satisfied for that, but then you're also going to benefit those around you, which for me, that's my girls,
Yeah.
So probably too cheesy, too deep, but that's kind of, those are my thoughts.
No, I love that actually, Dr. Chung, because I always tell people that your self-worth doesn't always equate to your net worth. I'm gonna repeat that. Your self-worth doesn't always equate to your net worth, you guys. So it's not all about the money, If you want to achieve that fulfillment, which we all love, you kind of have to do the right things always and lead with always helping others, give to give without give unconditionally. I feel like a lot of times people give with expectations of getting something in return versus just giving just to give. Just be a good person. All
Yeah.
right. All right. So we're almost there, Dr. Chung. Again, speaking of giving to give, I really appreciate you being here. I know it's a Saturday and I'm taking up a lot of your time, but I really appreciate you providing us as much value, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that as reps, we are being the best that we can for you and provide you as much value so we can, come home to our families early, or make sure the patient's safe, and make sure everybody's happy, not just you, but everybody in the room's happy. And today, guys, today's episode 39 of the Device Diaries, which I titled The Real Playbook from a surgeon's point of view. So hopefully you guys took notes. All right. So we have a few more minutes, Dr. Chung. Can you please tell us how can they follow you and find you?
Yeah, I mean, please don't come to my house or anything like that. But
Don't do that.
no, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm on Instagram as the spine surgeon, and then I'm on LinkedIn as well. Probably need to be more active. I've been a little bit quieter lately. But yeah, I mean, that's how you can follow me. And if I do, I am getting a little bit more active, in kind of society meetings and stuff like that. So, if you see me there, please say hello. I'm always happy to chat. And yeah, thanks so much for this opportunity to, um, contribute to hopefully a very successful podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
And to some degree, hopefully some of this kind of resonates with you as kind of budding device reps, and helps you in your career.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. Yes, for sure it does. And it does resonate. And it all goes back to, yes, we talk about like strategies, how to become a good rep. It all goes back to just be a good person, period. Just be a good person. Know your stuff, right? You're responsible for your own education, and just provide as much value. And, there's a lot of Me Too products out there, but what sets you apart at the end of the day as a rep, as a surgeon, is you. Okay. How you show up, how you treat others. It always goes back to that. Today is episode 39 of the Device Diaries, which I titled The Real Rep Playbook from the Surgeon's Point of View. My name is Gaida Laveres. Thank you guys for joining and listening. And remember to always be brave, be bold, and always be you. I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk soon.